welcome back to Mersey Sport Focus. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, the #1 darts reporter in the world. I'm joined by Connor Cain from Darts Now. Connor, how are you doing, mate?
The build-up's far too big for me. Far too much pressure.
Oh, mate, you are a special man in the darts world, so that's why I brought you on to talk about a very upsetting topic for me at the moment. It is the UK Open qualifiers, the Riley's qualifiers that we've had for years on years being scrapped. Me and Connor, once upon a time, actually faced each other in one of these Riley's qualifiers just a few years ago. I believe I came out on top.
Well, hang on. I was 3-1 up. I had like 12 match starts at double three. I was all on the wire. You know, you gotta. It's I banged in a 180 and hit a 9 straight after.
You
The
did.
conditions were awful. The people in the background. There's a draft in the yeah, it wasn't very good. Everything.
Well, we'll skip the excuses for now and just talk about what's happened with the PDC and the PDC's decision to get rid of the Riley's qualifiers. What are your overall thoughts on it?
I mean, I think this is a much larger issue. I think the PDC. The great thing about darts is that it's always been a pub sport and it's always been available and accessible to pretty much everybody. I mean, you really can go from the pub to being a professional player. I think now the PDC are unchallenged in their position in the world. There isn't really any competition. And they are turning it into an elitist sport, I guess, in some ways, which has its benefits. Of course, it does, but it also, I think, makes it harder for the common man to get into the sport. And you mentioned there the scrapping of the riders qualifiers. I mean, they've been a staple in darts for so long, and it's given us so many great stories. Rob Cross, for example, he was a riders qualifier, played in the UK Open as an amateur, and then very shortly after won the World Championship. And it makes it very difficult now for those people to get those opportunities. And I know that the PDC have something else in place, but it really isn't the same, because the other things that they've got in place where they have like a local qualifier at sort of certain venues around the country that they designate. They had one a few weeks ago. There were 7 people that turned up.
Yeah.
Now, me and you will know. You went to Liverpool Riders qualifying. How many people were there? There were loads of people there. It was full. It just makes the whole situation more shambolic. But yeah, it cuts off opportunities. And you can't have a guy anymore who's playing down the pub, and it costs £10 to enter these things as well. You can't just say, "Oh, let's whack a tenner on," because you never know what will happen, and it just creates more barriers into what has always been known, I think, as the people's sport.
I mean, you're exactly right, and Merseyside is seen as one of the capitals of the world for darts. You got
Yeah.
Littler, Chisnell, Bunting, just to name a few. And there's so many incredible amateur players. You see the ADC coming through with some incredible players from Merseyside. You get your Paul Mitchell, your Patrick Williams. Paul Mitchell just a game away from Lakeside this year. He's missing out on these opportunities. So I think specific to Merseyside, I think there was 3 last year and 2 the year before for UK Open qualifiers. There's hundreds of Merseyside players that aren't going to get this opportunity, and it's incredible to say hundreds. Like, this isn't just a few people missing out. This is huge for the sport, and I think the PDC have made this it's counterproductive. It doesn't make any sense, this decision at all.
No, it doesn't. And like I said, I mean, the problem with the PDC, I say problem. The problem with darts, I guess, is that um, the PDC, like I said, they're largely unchallenged, and they are not a sporting body. They are a commercial enterprise. So they, even though they do have a responsibility to the sport of darts, they are designed and set up to make the most money possible. And without going off on a tangent, that's why there are murmurings of more events in Saudi Arabia. There's an event in Bahrain at the moment, and it's all for the money. So I feel like for the PDC, the common man off the street doesn't necessarily make them money. So whilst there are still sort of token opportunities, like you said, the PDC does have its own sort of in-house alternative. Like you say, it isn't the same as having those Riley qualifiers all throughout the country. And like you said, Liverpool's was really popular. I think it had 3, didn't it? I think you said.
Yeah.
And it is hundreds of people who had that opportunity to try and make it as a professional through that route, like a Rob Cross did. It really limits that opportunity, and it's it's good that we do have an amateur game. You mentioned there things like the ADC, um, but it's it is a bitter pill to swallow, and I think when it was announced, it didn't go down well with a lot of the amateur fans because they knew what this meant for the amateur players, and that was less opportunity, and even the recreational player as well. I mean, guys like me and you, for example, I don't
Yeah,
think we had really any huge ambitions of coming through that qualifier and going to the UK Open, but it's a stepping stone. It's not just about whoever wins it. It's about you go to these events, these riders qualifiers, and you build the experience in playing actual competitive darts against some top level players as well. I mean,
yeah,
we had Peter Hudson, I think, turn up to the qualifier we did.
yeah, yeah.
Former PDC
I mean,
tour card
I've
holder.
I've played 3 years of the Riley's UK Open qualifiers. The last 3 years, one year I got you in my first round,
Mm.
but the other 2 years I had Leighton Bennett. Well, his story's come down a little bit, and Manlock Lung.
Really, was he
So
there?
they were my first two
Wow,
rounds of the UK Open qualifiers. So giving me those opportunities to play against the top level players like that, it was amazing for me.
I can't believe you
And
put my name in with those two, and
oh, I mean,
everyone has top level players.
of those, I won 5 legs overall, and 4 of them were against you. So I'll take that.
Who was the other one?
Leighton Bennett first leg.
Wow, first leg. Wow, you're leading
I know.
Leighton Bennett.
So if it was best of one, I would have won, and who knows? I may have ended up at my net.
Maybe. Who knows?
But I think, I mean, so there's only 4 community venues now for these UK Open qualifiers that, to put quite frankly, are in the middle of nowhere for
Yeah,
people from Merseyside, from Manchester, from London. You've got to travel hours and hours, and it's just not easy for people to do. Whereas locations, those 3 in Manchester, 3 in Liverpool, millions in London, Plymouth, down south. I think we're going to see a very desolate sort of UK Open this year. I mean, I did an interview yesterday with someone from the ADC who said it's the FA Cup of darts,
it is.
which is what we like to see. These first rounds where you get, he compared it to Tottenham versus Tamworth that we had the other day, and we're going to see less and less of that in the sport now. And for the viewer, it's devastating for us.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned that there's only 4 venues now, and they are in the middle of nowhere. And one of the issues darts has that even at the professional level, unless you are part of the elite, uh, these expenses that you have to pay, they add up. It is expensive being an amateur dart player. That's why something like the
Yeah,
Modus is quite good because it's just based in one thing. But if dart players are to travel to these venues, I mean, you think of the train fare or the petrol that costs. Then you think of the accommodation because, like you said, if they are in the middle of nowhere, they might not be able to commute all in one night, especially if they're taking the train. So they might have to stay over. Then you've got food and drinking expenses all on top of that. And unless they've got seriously good sponsors, and like I said, a lot of these amateur players are just like me and you. They're not going to have these sponsors.
no,
It's just very very expensive. So I mean, I think I said before that sort of these um, PDC in the community, I think they called it, was like a token gesture because in reality, unless you're from that local community, you know, people, unless you are sort of at the top of the amateur game,
yeah,
people just can't make that journey. It's not feasible for them. They'll have to take days of work as well.
yeah.
So that's more loss of earnings. You just can't afford it, and you are cutting the game off from the common man.
I mean, it upsets me that PDC have tried to paint it as a positive. Like, they've called the PDC in the community now, where last year, where we went, there was 196 players. I remember that stat from when we played. And that was one of 3 days. And you said there was 7 people who turned up to one of these events.
Yeah.
It's a real shame for
I
darts.
mean,
It
the
really
average
is.
is that the person. And listen, fair play to the guy that won, but darts is about competition, isn't it? I
Yeah,
mean,
it is.
if there's 7 people who rock up, I've got, I would
You've
have
got a shot. I've got a
plenty of
shot, you know?
chances. It's just incredible, and you're not going to get these big names for rock up as well. So I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. Um, I mean, at Liverpool, I was a student. Well, we both were students at
Yeah,
Liverpool, and we could afford £10
yeah,
to play the amateur qualifiers at Riley's. Whereas now, Even if money weren't an issue to find the time to, it's an insane move.
It's
It's an
time,
insane
isn't
move,
it?
but it's just something that creates further division between the professional game and the amateur game, and the amateur game needs to be protected because you can't have the sport thrive without that amateur game. Because if you compare it to something like football, I'd
Yeah,
say there's not loads and loads of untapped talent that don't make it in football because they're in these academies from such a young
yeah,
age that it is spotted and you are almost treated like a top level footballer
yeah.
when you're 10 years of old. Whereas in darts, you will genuinely have hundreds and thousands of people, men and women, who are really quality dart players, but they just cannot afford to make the most of those opportunities.
I
And
mean,
now
even
there's
like
another
Q school,
obstacle
yeah,
in front of that, where and yeah, Q school, it's like what for £500 entry fees
yeah, it's
in Q
ridiculous.
school, and these people, they can't even test themselves anymore at things like the Riley's qualifiers. I mean, Gary Daver, who won it
Yeah,
when he won our qualifier, and then he went to the UK Open, and I think he beat Lee Evans. He got £1,000 for £1,000 to the common man. Like I said, is an awful lot of money.
and you paid ten
Um,
pounds for that opportunity. ten
yeah,
pounds.
yeah. Whereas now that doesn't exist.
It doesn't. I just think the PDC going in the wrong direction. I mean, they've had so much success with stories like Luke Littler and like Rob Cross in 2018, who within 365 days was amateur to world champion beating Phil Taylor. And I think if they want, I mean, it doesn't even make sense money wise for them. Because if they want people to get involved and look at these stories and, watch the game, watch the smaller events like the UK Open, if you want to call it one of those, you want to bring eyes to those sorts of stories.
Yes, but I think from the PDC's point of view now, I think they're sort of interested in maximising their how much revenue they can bring in from their top players, their top 16 players. I mean,
Yeah,
something like, not to go off on a tangent again, but the introduction of the Masters as a ranking tournament and putting the top 24 straight in, the changes to the European Tour, it's all designed, I think, to sort of protect this top 16 because, uh, you know, I think if you look at something like that Rob Cross story and sort of anything that they do make from things at the UK Open and any sort of local interest, that would pale in comparison to something like a Bahrain would offer to have eight of the best players in the world.
yeah.
So unfortunately, it is being treated more and more as a business nowadays, and I think it would be good then actually if the WDF stepped in and maybe they had their own version of a Riley's qualifier, and that would give them some qualification to maybe an event that they can put on. It's just whether they have the finances to do that.
I think that's a great idea, and it's sad to see the top level of darts going in the wrong direction. It's nice to see people like the ADC and the Modus getting people like us involved into these things. But I think we'll wrap it up there. But with the Bahrain Darts Masters coming up soon, I'd like an answer from you. Who's your dark horse for the event?
Dark horse. Oh
Dark
wow.
horse. I don't want you to say Littler's gonna win.
Yeah, I would have said Luke. Well, I mean, can somebody call Luke Humphries a dark horse? It
No.
seems absolutely ridiculous. But he seems to be going under the radar. I think it's so difficult because a lot of players have quite rightly taken a holiday after the World Championship. I am unfortunately going to write off quite a lot of the Asian players. I just don't think they have the
Mm.
quality. Um, I'm going to go with actually, and again, it's ridiculous to call him a dark horse, but he's not won a title in about 2 3 years. I'm going to go with Garen Price.
Yeah.
I don't think his game is quite where he wants it to be, but for me, the important thing with Gavin Price is that his mind is in the right place and he's saying all of the right things. He's saying that he wants to play everything. He was saying he wanted the Premier League, although I think part of that was the fact that he realised how much money he would have been
Mm.
missing out of by talking himself out of it. But yeah, I think if Gavin Price really has the head on his shoulders I think he's got now, judging by
Yeah.
the words he's been saying, I think if he could kick off with a title here.
I mean, it's a similar story to Kellen Ridds, isn't it? I mean, when he was sort of in a dark place mentally and couldn't quite get his mindset in the right place, he wasn't performing well on stage or on the floor. And then everything seemed to click for him, especially at this World Championships, when his head seemed to be screwed on. He was smiling the entire time on stage and he put in what I thought was one of the best performances I've seen at World Championship for a player like him.
Yeah, he just needs to keep that on now. I mean, we saw it a few years ago. He made a quarter final, and then he had a torrid 2 years after that. He said to us at the World Championship so many times, if he's got a happy life at home, then he plays top level darts. But he can be a bit of a loose cannon, and mindset is so important. We spoke to Ryan Joyce, and even he's getting help on the sort
Yeah,
of the mental side of his game to improve his attitude. You know, you've got these players now who aren't just happy making a few quid here and there. They want to kick on. They want to win titles, and darts is in a very exciting moment because outside of your Luke Litters and stuff, you've got players lower down the rankings who really want to commit and dedicate to this sport because of the money involved. It is just a shame that those barriers for those even lower in the amateur game seem to be higher and higher to get into the PDC. But I guess that's just the way it is. And fortunately, for us, as much as the PDC are maybe cutting themselves off from the amateur game, there do seem to be more amateur opportunities by organisations like the Modus and the ADC and the
yeah,
WDF. So the amateur game is in a good place, but it does need funding. It does need investment. The PDC have that money. The other guys need a bit of help, I think.
yeah. Well, let's cross our fingers for people like us
Yeah.
to get more opportunities in the game. But thank you very much, Connor, for your time.
No
It's been a
problem. So
pleasure.
anytime.
Take care, mate.
Thank you, mate. Thanks.